Picture the most boring superhero movie you've ever seen. No dramatic backstory, no villain arc, no tragic flaw. Just a guy who shows up every single week and wins. That's Scottie Scheffler. He doesn't pump his fist. He doesn't stare anyone down. He looks honestly like he's mildly annoyed he has to be there instead of home with his kids. And yet, by almost every measure that matters, he might be the best golfer alive right now. Today, we're answering the question everyone in golf is quietly asking: how good is Scottie Scheffler actually? Before we get to the trophies, it's worth remembering he wasn't some can't-miss prodigy who was destined for this from age 6. He grew up in Dallas, went to Highland Park High School, and became one of the best amateurs in the country at the University of Texas. A 2-time All-American, a low amateur finish at the 2017 U.S. Open, and enough buzz that when he turned pro in 2018, people in the golf world were paying attention, but nobody was calling him a generational talent yet. He was named PGA Tour Rookie of the Year in 2020. Solid, promising, not yet historic. If you told scouts back then that this quiet, unassuming kid from Texas would eventually be mentioned in the same breath as Tiger Woods, most of them would have laughed. That's part of what makes what happened next so strange. There was no single moment where everyone agreed a superstar had arrived. He just kept getting better week after week until one day everyone looked up and he was already at the top. So let's start with the paper case because it's absurd. 4 major championships, 2 Masters, 2022 and 2024, a PGA Championship in 2025, an Open Championship at Royal Portrush later that same year, 20 PGA Tour wins before turning 30, a club that, before him, only had 2 other members, Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus. He's an Olympic gold medalist from the 2024 Games in Paris. He's led the PGA Tour money list 4 years running. He's been named PGA Tour Player of the Year 4 consecutive times. And somewhere in between all of that, he became just the 3rd player in history to cross $100 million in career PGA Tour earnings. Oh, and he's done all of this while also raising 2 young sons and, by every account, actually going home to be a dad instead of living on a private jet chasing exhibition checks. There's no scandal here, no off-course drama, just golf, family, and an unsettling amount of winning. Here's the stat that separates really good golfer from generational golfer. Scheffler has held the world #1 ranking for well over 190 weeks. That's not a hot streak. That's not a good year. That's nearly 4 years of being, on average, better than every other golfer on the planet. He first got there in March 2022. He's basically never left. Other guys have had their moments, flashes of brilliance, hot months, a major run, but nobody has strung together sustained dominance like this since peak Tiger, and that's the comparison everyone wants to make, isn't it? So let's actually make it carefully. Look, comparing anyone to peak Tiger Woods is usually a trap. Tiger's prime wasn't just dominance, it was cultural gravity. He moved television ratings. He built or broke entire tournaments by whether he showed up. Golf as a business was reshaped around one player. Scheffler doesn't have that same star power gravity, at least not yet. He's famously, almost defiantly unflashy. No sponsor-friendly catchphrases, no rivalry storylines he leans into. He's openly said he'd rather be home than out here winning golf tournaments, which is not exactly the marketing pitch of a made-for-TV superstar. But strip away the personality and just look at the actual golf, and the numbers start rhyming in an uncomfortable way. Scheffler's strokes gained numbers, particularly tee to green, are some of the best ever recorded on tour. He doesn't beat you with one dazzling skill. He beats you by being excellent at literally everything, every single week, with almost no bad rounds. That's the terrifying part for the rest of the field. His floor is other players' ceiling. On a week where he's off, he still finishes top 10. That kind of week-to-week reliability is exactly what made Tiger so suffocating to compete against, and it's exactly what makes Scheffler so suffocating now. For years, the one crack in the armor was putting. Elite ball striker, merely average with the flat stick, the golf equivalent of a superhero whose only weakness is inconveniently the thing he has to do on every single hole. It got so pronounced that it became the defining storyline of his early major wins. How is this guy winning the Masters while ranking outside the top 100 in putting? The answer for a while was that he was simply so dominant tee to green that he could afford to be mediocre on the greens and still win by 4. Then, in March of 2024, right before the Arnold Palmer Invitational, he made the switch, swapping his blade putter for a mallet. The results were almost immediate. He gained over 4 strokes putting that week and won the tournament. The next week, he won the Players' Championship. A month later, he defended his Masters title. He wasn't done tinkering either. By December of that year, he'd added a claw grip for his short putts while keeping a conventional grip for longer ones. A hybrid setup most amateurs would find bizarre, but one that quietly turned his worst skill into merely an above-average one. And that's the part that should genuinely scare his competition. When your worst skill stops being a liability and everything else is already historically great, there's nowhere left to attack. Before we move on, it's worth talking about the golf swing itself because it looks nothing like a coaching manual. Golf fans have nicknamed it the Scheffler Shuffle, a footwork pattern where his lower body slides and rotates in a way that looks almost accidental, like he's losing his balance mid-downswing. Broadcasters used to point at it as a flaw to fix. Coaches on television would show slow-motion replays and wince, except it isn't a flaw, it's the engine. That unusual hip and foot action is exactly what generates the clubhead speed and consistency that make his ball striking so repeatable. It's a reminder that golf instruction loves clean, textbook positions, but the sport has always rewarded whatever actually works. Jim Furyk's swing wasn't pretty either, and he made a Hall of Fame career out of it. Scheffler's version just happens to be attached to a level of consistency nobody else on tour can currently match. If 2022 was the arrival, 2023 and 2024 were the years he made dominance look routine. He won the Players' Championship in both 2023 and 2024, becoming the first player in history to win the Tour's flagship event in back-to-back years. A feat that had eluded literally everyone who came before him, including Tiger. In 2024 alone, he won the Players again, then the Arnold Palmer Invitational, then defended his Masters title with a 4-stroke win over Ludwig Oberg. Then he went to Paris and won Olympic gold, closing with a final round in the mid-60s to run away from the field. By the end of that season, he'd racked up 9 wins worldwide and become the unanimous PGA Tour Player of the Year for what was by then becoming an annual formality. It's worth pausing on how rare this stretch actually is. Most great seasons in golf are remembered as anomalies, a hot putter, a perfect run of health, a soft major setup. Scheffler's peak seasons don't have an asterisk. He was simply better than everyone on every kind of course, in every kind of condition. And then, on Christmas Day, 2024, the world #1 golfer nearly took himself out with a wine glass. Making homemade ravioli at a rental house with none of the right kitchen tools, Scheffler grabbed the only cutting instrument available, an upside-down wine glass, to slice the dough. It shattered under his hand, and the broken stem punctured his palm just below the middle finger. He needed surgery. He missed the start of his season, sitting out 2 tournaments he normally plays, including one of his favorites. It's the kind of freak, faintly ridiculous injury that would derail a lot of athletes' confidence heading into a major season. Scheffler's response was basically a shrug. He said, more or less, that he couldn't live in a bubble, that accidents happen, and that he'd just have to be more careful in kitchens going forward. He returned in late January, a little rusty, and then went on to have arguably the best major championship stretch of his career. In May of 2025 at Quail Hollow, Scheffler won the PGA Championship by 5 strokes for his 3rd major title. 2 months later, in July, he added a 4th major at the Open Championship at Royal Portrush, a golf course that punishes mistakes as ruthlessly as any in the world and one he handled like it owed him money. 4 majors before the age of 30, 20 PGA Tour wins, a resume that at this point isn't really a debate about whether he's great. It's a debate about how great and compared to whom. It's easy to talk about Scheffler in a vacuum, but dominance only means something relative to the field he's dominating. And this era of golf isn't short on talent. Rory McIlroy remains one of the most gifted ball strikers of his generation, and as we've covered elsewhere on this channel, completed his career Grand Slam. Jon Rahm has major titles of his own and enormous raw ability. Xander Schauffele has been one of the most consistent top 10 machines on tour for years, and yet none of them have managed to string together anything close to Scheffler's run at the top of the rankings. It's not that the era lacks great players, it's that Scheffler has made greatness the baseline expectation and then cleared it anyway, week after week, against a deeper field than Tiger ever had to face in the 2000s. That context matters. He isn't dominating a weak era, he's dominating a stacked one. There is one corner of golf where Scheffler's record actually looks human: team play. His Ryder Cup record has been shakier than his individual dominance would suggest, and it's become one of the few legitimate criticisms anyone can level at him. It's a strange wrinkle in the story of a player this good, proof that even the most complete golfer in the world hasn't fully solved every format the sport throws at him. Match play, alternate shot, the emotional chaos of a Ryder Cup crowd. It's a different animal than a normal Tour Sunday, and it's the one place where never out of it hasn't always held up. If there's a real chink anywhere in the armor, this is it. So why does none of this feel like it gets talked about the way it should? Part of it is genuinely about personality. Scheffler has never seemed interested in being a character. He doesn't manufacture rivalries. He doesn't chase virality. Watch enough of his post-round interviews and a pattern emerges. He talks about processes, patience, and staying even-keeled in the same measured tone, whether he just won by 5 or missed a cut. But that boring demeanor might actually be the whole secret. He's talked before about grinding through rounds where he was nearly out of contention on a Saturday, only to birdie his way back into a tournament and win it in a playoff the next day, not through some emotional surge, but through refusing to get rattled and just doing his job hole after hole. That's not a flashy story. It's also exactly the mentality that wins majors on Sunday afternoons when everyone else's hands start shaking. Tiger's dominance was built on intimidation, the sense that opponents had already lost before the round started. Scheffler's dominance is built on the opposite feeling. Nothing rattles him, so there's no crack to exploit. You can't out-execute someone who refuses to panic. Here's the twist, though. 2026 has actually shown us something new. He can be beaten. He finished runner-up at the Masters this year after a bogey-free final round charge. He lost a playoff at the RBC Heritage to Matt Fitzpatrick. He lost another playoff at the Travelers Championship to Viktor Hovland. And weirdly, that's part of the answer to how good is he actually. Even in a stretch where he didn't win the biggest events, he was there every single time. Bogey-free final round at Augusta. In the mix at Hilton Head, in the mix at the Travelers. He didn't get hot for a week and fade. He was a threat to win nearly every tournament he entered against players who are all trying to figure out how to beat the best player in the world, and on a handful of Sundays this year, actually managing it. That's the real definition of actually good. Not wins every time, never out of it. So how good is Scottie Scheffler actually? He's not the most exciting golfer to watch. He's not selling out arenas with his personality. He may never have Tiger's cultural weight, and it's not clear he even wants it. But judged purely on golf, the only thing that actually decides these debates, he's arguably been the most consistently dominant player of his generation and one of the most dominant of any generation. 4 majors over 190 weeks at number 1, 20 wins before 30, a floor higher than most players' ceiling against one of the deepest fields the sport has ever had. The only question left isn't whether he's good, it's whether, when we look back in 10 years, good is even going to feel like the right word. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below with what your thoughts are on Scottie Scheffler. Do you think he's the greatest of all time, or where do you think he stacks up against the other greats? Thanks again, and see you next time.